I was raised in the 1980s, and during a time when it was woven into the fabric of our society that your gender identity and your gender expression are yoked to and dictated by your sexual characteristics. And this simply is not the case. Moreover, our social/cultural construction of gender is a construct of binary columns and rigid enclosures. You see, in America, everyone who is born is assigned a box for their gender identity. You are either assigned box A or box B based on your day one sexual characteristics. I want us to rethink why we place all people into a labeling system that consists of only two options, box A or box B, and for us to consider using a spectrum to describe the diversity of our gender identities. Consider the following. You are not looking at my gender identity, and I am not looking at your gender identity. No one can ever see your gender identity because your identity is within you, and you are the only person who has access to it. What I am seeing when I look at y'all is your gender expression, and what y'all are seeing when you look at me is my gender expression. Our gender expressions are reflections of our gender identities, and these reflections, they are viewed through the lenses of our gender performances. My gender performance and your gender performance is how we interact with not just the society we live in, but also how we interact with our own gender identity. To simplify all that jargon, gender identity equals your inner self. Gender expression equals how you project that identity from inward to outward. And gender performance equals how you interact with society and yourself. Question: how many of you predetermine my gender identity and genital orientation? If I was to walk in here, talk for 10 seconds without introducing myself, and then walk out, would you have turned to the person next to you and asked, do you think she's coming back? Or would you have asked, do you think he's coming back? How many of you think a person's genitals should dictate that person's gender identity? According to the Dallas Morning News, in an article by Seaman Yasmin, December of 2015, I'm just going to read a few sentences from this article. Fighting on the front lines in Afghanistan means hopping out of trucks to walk on foot in terrain too rugged for military vehicles. That could explain why more than 1,400 U.S. troops suffered injuries to the penis, testicles, or bladder from 2001 to 2013 while serving in Afghanistan and Iraq. Their average age was 24. Wow. 1,400 U.S. soldiers with genital injuries. Let's do a thought experiment. Let's say that you and I are at a veterans hospital and we are visiting a young 24-year-old soldier named, let's call him Aaron. Aaron is a good soldier and loves his country and believed that nothing he could do was more manly than for him to join the army and serve his country. Aaron knows he is 100% man and a damn fine soldier. While clearing a battlefield, Aaron triggered an IED and is now in a hospital bed, badly wounded and unsure of how he is going to live his best life after losing both testicles and his penis when he stepped on that IED. Now, you and I are standing just outside that soldier's recovery room, and there are some bigoted people outside. Would you let any of those people go into that soldier's room and tell him that he is less than 100% man after losing his genitals? Would you? I know for me, I would not let anyone go into Aaron's room and tell him that his gender identity is dictated by his sexual characteristics or lack thereof. And I'm hoping y'all would do the same. Folks, gender identity comes from one source and from only one source. And that is from within the South. The identity comes from within. And that is why the I in identity is the most important part of gender identity. Look, most people are cis in their gender assignment, their gender identity, their gender expression, and their gender performance are all in complete accord with each other. But not all people. Not all people. Not all Americans are cis. Not all Canadians are cis. Not all Brazilians. Not all Cubans. Not all Guatemalans. Not all Europeans. Not all Asians. Not all humans are cis. Some of us are non-cis. And being non-cis does not take a thing away from being American, Canadian, Brazilian, Cuban, Guatemalan, European, Asian, and it does not take a thing away from being human, because being non-cis is part of being human across all times and spaces. For 42 years of my life, I was trying to live up to an assignment that was placed on me based on a sexual characteristic which I happened to have had at birth. For 42 years of my life, I did not know that I could question my gender identity. So, for more than 4 decades, I did not ask those types of questions. For more than 4 decades, I was uncomfortable in my own skin and did not know why. For more than 4 decades, I did not know myself. For more than 4 decades, I did not know that I did not have to fit into box A, or that I could question whether I should even try to fit into that box. For more than 4 decades, I was in the wrong box. Not everybody fits into a gender-assigned box, and not everybody belongs in the box assigned to them at birth. I fit nicely into our society's concept and construct of box B, and I'm fine with that. But I am also privileged and fortunate to fit into that box. Moving my gender expression and gender performance from box A to box B, well, that is my transition, or why I use the label transgender woman. In 2012, I started a journey of self-exploration while being completely open and honest with myself. That journey took me around turns I did not anticipate or expect, and over hills I never dreamt I could climb. But through rigorous and earnest questioning of myself, and through the painful process of ardently and honestly answering those questions, I discovered myself. And for the first time in my life, I started to feel comfortable in my own skin. Moreover, for the first time in my life, I started to like myself. In moments of reflection, often I wonder what my life would have been like if I had discovered my gender identity at a much younger age. I missed out on being a young lady, or a teenage girl, or a 30-something woman with the world in front of her. I missed out on a lifetime of my womanhood because I was placed in a box. Now, we've come to a time in this talk when I am going to challenge you to think about gender identity, gender expression, and gender performance as concepts and constructs that are best described on a spectrum, and not through a rigid binary box system, and not by whether a person has or has not a dangly part between their legs. My friends, the more we understand, the less we fear. And I want our society to understand non-cis and transgender people more clearly. I hope that one day, transgender and non-cis people are treated by society in the way that they should be treated. You know, like people.